Okay, welcome everybody. Thanks so much for being with us this morning. I hear we have a little bit of competition from some guy named like Andrew Ng or something at like 9 a.m. So glad you made a choice here to spend your time with us. My name's Chris, and I work at Blue River Technology, and it's my pleasure and honor today to talk to you about some of the work that we've been doing with computer vision and machine learning to increase farmer productivity. So just a little bit about myself. I come from a physics background. In fact, I did my master's at UBC just up the road here. So if you do get a chance to go to UBC and check out the campus, it's gigantic and really, really fun place to be. So definitely recommend it. I guess I'm in my 26 and a half year of professional experience and 7.5 years at Blue River Technology. Prior to that, I was in the remote sensing space at Digital Globe. So it's called Maxar now, but we used to build all the ortho maps that were kind of, I call it splat maps, but Apple Maps, Here Maps, all the Google Maps, all the big map providers used to buy imagery from that layer. Received a couple of awards for some of the products I'll be talking about. Currently live in California in Sunnyvale, and there's a picture of us at Yosemite, and then we also try to get out to Tahoe as much as possible. A little bit about Blue River. So this was a startup, and it was founded in 2011. Jorge Herod and Lee Redden were Stanford grads and actually got together and formed this company, and they had this idea that they wanted to do plant-by-plant management using computer vision to really, bring some value into ag. So we're currently headquartered in Santa Clara, California. Just moved into a brand new building 2 weeks ago. We have offices in San Francisco, Gilroy, and Austin, Texas. Gilroy is just about 45 minutes south of Santa Clara, and that's where we have our test farm. So we have a bunch of test equipment there, and we test all our equipment in Gilroy. The startup was acquired by John Deere in 2017, and now we operate really as a kind of a wholly owned subsidiary in the what's called the automation and autonomy group within John Deere. So this was kind of a surprising statistic when I found out about it, that Deere machines are literally everywhere, and they traverse over 1/3 of the Earth's surface each year. So just to kind of put the impact at scale into perspective, if you can make some improvements on what those machines are doing, just because they're already scaled out to such a high degree, they're going to have a huge impact on people's workflows. Also want to chat just briefly about the agricultural productivity gap. So, why should you work on agriculture, and why should you care about computer vision in agriculture? Well, there's a lot of studies out there, and they all sort of agree that by 2050, we sort of collectively as a human race need to increase the farm output by 70 to 100%. So there's this huge gap brewing, and the consequences of this are pretty dire because we won't be able to feed the amount of people on the earth. So the constraints that we have, though, are you can't create more land. Generally, that's not a good solution. But you can get more, you can get more efficient with what you're doing, and you can try to, do more with less. Okay, so that's kind of what motivates some of this work of getting more efficient and increasing farmers' productivity. So our goal at John Deere Blue River is to make our customers the most productive, profitable, and sustainable in the world. So along those lines, the first product that we launched is called See and Spray. And we'll see what happens when I click the play button.
When we walked across the field, we thought it was clear, but it was finding weeds that we couldn't see walking around. We had to almost get down. When it got one that was this big and knew it wasn't a soybean plant or knew it wasn't a rock or a piece of dirt, it sprayed all the way around it. That's amazing.
it was more amazing for me sitting in the cab. But I wanted to see what was happening and to see the monitor flashing, then to see the machine, picking up all of the weeds at the speed of 10 miles per hour. It was amazing. It really were.
On the way over here, I was kind of had my doubts that it's going to see it and spray it and not do it as well. But it's well enough that I would order 2 machines with it right now for next year if possible. I'm excited about this. I was impressed at how well it worked.
All right, that was a little choppier than I was hoping for, but hopefully you got some of the idea there. What this machine does, this is called if you've ever seen one of these things before, this machine here is called a self-propelled sprayer. And this is one of the most important tools on the farm. I would say every farmer that has, more than say 2,000 acres owns kind of at least one of these things, or leases one, or, works with an ag service provider to use these on their farm. So what you're looking at is 120-foot boom. So from tip to tip, 120 feet. This machine can do roughly 800 acres a day. So it's a really highly productive workflow. Typically what farmers are doing, there's a dual tank on this one, 1,200 gallons, and it's divided between 2 types of, you can actually put 2 types of herbicide in there if you want, or you can use the combined mode to have a 1,200 gallon. So in terms of the tech that's on this machine, it's pretty amazing. So there's 36 cameras. I don't know if I have, oh yes, I do have the ability to point with the mouse, cool. So cameras are mounted here on these triangular frames, and these are just to protect the cameras. There's 36 of them. They're spaced by a meter along the boom, and they're looking in an area of about 2,100 square feet. So, the size of somebody's floor plan of their house. Looking forward so that we can see what's in front of the machine. And these are the eyes of the system. The brain of the system is shown here. We call this the VPU, Vision Processing Unit. It's a robust computing platform that's built on the Xavier embedded platform from NVIDIA. So this is kind of the successor to the Jetson. The next one's the Orin. So the next generation that we build will be built around the Orin. But the Xavier is a pretty impressive machine by itself. I'll talk a little bit more about it in a minute. On the actuation side, so this little picture here shows what's called the exact apply nozzle body. So these are actually 6 different nozzles that the farmer can select depending on what kind of herbicide that they're going to spray on their crops. So this gives you 6 choices, and in our system we have an A and a B nozzle that correspond to that tank 1 and tank 2. So have the ability to see and spray out of the B side, and then you could broadcast if you want out of the A side, or you can combine the tank and spray all out of the B side. So you have a lot of options with this machine. You might be asking like, well, why would you do spot spray and broadcast herbicide? That sounds kind of counterintuitive. And the reason you would do that is you could put a residual down at the same time. So residual is a herbicide that goes into the soil and prevents weeds from emerging. So this is a sort of a bet to keep weeds from emerging from the soil. So you can kind of do 2 workflows at once. So if you're going 12 miles an hour with that, it's kind of like you're going 24 miles an hour because you don't have to go over it twice. So just a little bit about the computing platform and the deep learning. So we take these images, 2,100 square feet. We run them through the deep learning algorithm. It's a convolutional based deep learning algorithm to segment crop versus weed. Then we take the location of those weeds, project them to the ground as accurately as we can, and then it becomes a timing problem. So we want to, this robot's actually a pretty simple robot. It either turns the nozzle on or turns it off, and that's really the only 2 actions it can take. So as we're going through, you know, we have the vehicle forward velocity. We have IMUs on the boom to model the boom motion, because as you can imagine, even though it is made of carbon fiber, this thing weighs thousands of pounds and it's 60 feet away from the front or from the center, right? So you can see it's going to be really hard to control this thing. It actually does an amazing job of holding this thing kind of within a 10-inch square. 95% of the time it holds it within the desired 10-inch square. So some pretty amazing control algorithms on this machine. So yeah, this is a precision spray machine. It identifies weeds in the field and then only sprays the weeds. And this brings farmers about 2/3 savings. So when we look across our whole fleet, we're seeing savings around 2/3 for everybody who uses it. This is one of the data products that we, oh, well, there it goes. Okay. This is one of the data products that we have available for farmers. So there's this system called Operations Center, John Deere Operations Center. And this is an applied spray map. So the colors represent really just the amount of gallons per acre that you're sticking on there. So the gray is no gallons per acre, and the orange is kind of the targeted rate. And you might wonder, like, well, why is it green? And what happens is the rate is actually, the targeted rate is tied to the speed that you're going. So whenever you're stopping, you're going to be putting higher rates on. So you can kind of tell where people are stopping in their field by looking at this map. So in this case, there's kind of 62.8% savings. And kind of behind this, like one of the, you know, why is it spraying? Well, it's spraying primarily because of weeds. And this is the weed map that we create, and it's available to the farmer. And I think what's really cool about this data, this is kind of the first time that anyone's collected weed, you know, spatial weed data from somebody's field. And if you own one of these machines, this thing is streaming this data up into John Deere Operations Center, and you can see this every time you go into your field. So imagine kind of, you know, the potential of this as a farmer, because you can look at the time series, right? You can say, okay, like I did my last spray in May, and I've got a couple more coming up. How did I do, right? You can see how your weeds are evolving in your field. Hopefully that weed population, that weed density is going down. If it's not, it might mean that maybe you're applying the wrong herbicide program. So it gives you an opportunity to give a spatial idea of where your weed control is working, where it isn't. You know, maybe you've got some weed resistance, herbicide resistance in your field. You can look at these maps and find those areas of weed resistance. If you're going to go like next year and say, how much should I spend on herbicide? Well, the old calculation was take your number of acres and then take your target rate, you know, 20 gallons per acre, boom. Okay, I know how much herbicide I need to buy. Well, with this, now you can say, hey, well, I saved, you know, 67% on this field last year. So I can really reduce the amount that I'm going to spend on herbicides. It really gives you a lot of, it gives you this sort of spatial intelligence that wasn't present before. I think one of my favorite weed maps that I've seen was one that had these kind of like curved areas of weeds. And like, we're all just looking at this thing thinking like, what's wrong with this? It's got to be a bug, right? Like, how can you get these sort of like circular weeds like in your field? And we realized it was tumbleweeds. So when tumbleweeds kind of blow across a field, they're dropping seeds, right? And so they're sort of getting blown by the wind across this guy's field, and that's actually showing up in the weed map. So that was a pretty kind of an interesting insight. So to kind of put this into perspective, on an annual basis, there's 23 million gallons of herbicide applied in the US. And so if we can provide 2/3 savings, and you know, that means there's 15 million gallons of herbicide that aren't sprayed. And to put that into a dollar figure, that represents about $1 billion in herbicide savings. So, you know, this is a pretty compelling economical argument for farmers, but farmers are also stewards of the land, and they really rely on the the soil for their living. So they have a vested interest in keeping those nutrients in the soil, and spraying fewer chemicals allows you to do that. Like less herbicide on the soil is a sustainable farming practice, and it excites a lot of farmers to be able to do that. I think one of the most interesting things about this product too is when we were demoing this with farmers. We've been at this for a few years now. It was launched in 2022, and in the years prior to that, we'd show up on the farmer's farm and either do demos for them or hand them the keys and say, you tell us what you think and you tell us how it works. And one of the things that really stuck with me is that during all these demos, there'd be a lot of skepticism, and this is one of the funniest products because it almost, from a theoretical standpoint, I designed a lot of the system and I understand sort of how it works really, really well, but you don't really kind of get that aha moment sometimes until you're walking behind a machine. So, what we would do in these grower demos is we'd fill the tank with water and we'd put blue dye on so that you could see where the sprays were. And then we'd spray an area and then invite them to kind of walk behind and watch where it sprayed and, count the misses and the hits and things like that. And it was really very, very cool because, they sort of approach this and be like pretty skeptical. Like, I don't know if it's going to work. They walk behind the machine and they see like how well it was working, and they just would really change their mind. Like, oh, wow. And one of the things they told me is like, I knew this was coming, this technology was coming, but I thought it was like a decade out. You're on the farm today showing me the future. And that comment kind of always stuck with me because it is, it's obviously everybody in this room understands the explosion in deep learning and convolutional neural networks. This kind of product that does in-row weeding, we would call it green-on-green weeding. So we're actually trying to distinguish crop versus weed in a row crop. This is only doable with convolutional neural networks. This product was previously impossible, say prior to 2012. So, it is pretty interesting. These farmers really are excited by this technology and they see the potential. Another product that we've released is called the autonomous tillage solution. And what we have done here is taken the 8R tractor and we've put perception pack on it. So perception pack consists of the 6 stereo cameras. And this thing, this is actually a night shot. So this can operate 24 hours a day, day or night. And believe it or not, there's no operator in this cab. So, I guess this is CVPR, so you should try to make bold predictions, but I think we're going to see autonomy on the farm a lot sooner than you're going to see an autonomous car in your driveway. That's my personal prediction. One of the advantages that we have here with autonomy on the farm is, if you're trucking along at 8 miles an hour and you see something that you don't quite know what it is, or it looks like you shouldn't drive there, all you have to do is stop, right? And that's essentially a terrible algorithm to employ on the freeway, right? That is like probably not what you want to do in the freeway. So we have a lot of, it's actually in some sense, it's a lot simpler kind of a planning algorithm. You see something, you just stop. And then we have a eye in the sky management kind of remote teleop. So if the robot stops, an alert is flagged, somebody looks at it, decides if it's false positive or something that actually has to be moved, and then they can clear the error that way. So if I was to, I don't know how many farmers we have in the room or people who grew up in farming backgrounds, but if I was to put you in this machine, you'd look at me and you'd be like, okay, I see the steering wheel and I think I understand what that does, but I don't understand anything else on this. And it's a true comment. So, there's this kind of joystick thing that looks like an F-16 and it's got like 25 buttons on it. There's a whole bunch of buttons all over the panel. all these buttons are important. They all do things. And if I stuck you in this thing, you'd be really wondering like what you should be doing. You'd probably find the key. That the key is easy to find, and you might be able to turn it on and get it running. But then the rest of it's going to be a challenge. But the good news is it's not that hard to learn how to do one of these, especially for tillage. And when we're removing people from the cab, right, there's really a ton that we have to solve to be able to do that, right? So the farmer is making all these instantaneous decisions. Typically, when you're tilling, you're trying to keep your eye on what's going on behind you, what's going on in front of you. Are you at the right depth? Are you at the right speed? Is there some big rock coming up that you have to avoid, right? You have to kind of like do all this instantaneously. And humans are pretty good at it, but man, it's a long, tiring job. And so, this is kind of the challenge that we have, but the value to the farmer is really high. As you probably heard, the labor market for agriculture is extremely challenging, especially in the US. And farmers literally cannot find anybody who will do these kinds of jobs. And, if you've got sort of 12,000 acres to till before you can plant, it becomes a bottleneck, right? A huge bottleneck for you. So this is why autonomy is such a huge value proposition for farmers, because it allows them to solve their labor challenge. They can run this machine from an app. So on their iPhone, they could geofence it, and then they can just sort of set it to run, and it runs all by itself. You don't have to tend to it. So this saves them a lot of time, and they can go do other things on their farm. Okay, with that, I think I'll wrap up. Do have one more video, but I think it's a little choppy, so we'll just jump right to questions. Thank you very much.
For one or two questions. Yeah, and go ahead and hop up to the mic if you want to. If you're in the room and want to speak, figure out how to.
I was wondering about the scalability of the discussion for the director and the different sites. Of the scalability of different crops. Because if there is a need to make that when you think of different crops. So how does it apply when you deploy different crops?
Yeah, great question. I'll repeat the question for the folks online. The question was about how do you solve the domain adaptation problem to new crops? So there's 3 crops that are supported in this machine. It's cotton, soy, and corn. And those are the 3 big ones where people would do the most acres. We also have a 4th mode called fallow, and that's a kind of a burn down mode. So pre-tillage, you go in and just kind of spray everything that's green. So we have those 4 models. And the question is, how do you support new models? And I think the good news here is that because we've got such an extensive image library, we've been at this for multiple years now, and we've got a multi-continental, multi-year database from all the places that we want this machine to operate on the Earth. We can actually bootstrap this to work into new crops. So we found our first crop that we released, I think was soybeans, and then we wanted to do cotton and corn. And the first one's hard. The next one's becomes progressively easier, just because you have all that learning from all that new image content. So yeah, it doesn't take us that long to create specialized models for new crops.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chris.
All right, thanks everybody.
A few other questions. Again, there's the chat in Zoom that might be a little bit tricky. I think also the Rocket chat should be live. That's where we can have additional interaction with the speakers. Now we're going to move on to the paper talks. First, we have the 2 longer oral presentations. For those presenters, again, like anybody else will say, you can present off of your machine if you connect to Zoom, and we'll make you the host, or you can connect off of the machine here.
Do you want to check if Zoom is automated or it's for video and audio?
Yeah.
Setting up. Yeah, good.
I don't have full settings and full access. Sorry, direct me where you want me to take a look?
Yeah.
Got it.
Let me look it up.
In the meantime, we'll go ahead and get started. So our first presentation, let me get back to my schedule, is Peanut Nerf 3D Radiance Field for Peanuts. Is our presenter online or in the? Okay, we need to share. Okay. Sorry, I heard somebody online.
For peanut
There you
Nerf.
go. There you go. See you there. All right, go ahead and take control. You want to, I assume you want to present off of yours, supposed to be clicking through, correct?
Yes.
Okay, very good. You should be able to claim to share your screen. All right, very good. We see your slides.
Hi, everybody. Hope you are all doing good. My name is Farah Said. I'm a PhD student in University of Georgia, working with Dr. Changing Charlie Lee and Dr. Vincent from University of Florida and Georgia, respectively. Today, I intend to present the research on peanut nerf, which is related to 3D radiance fields for peanuts. Starting from the background, the plant phenotyping is the process to analyze the plant traits. So plant phenotyping is important to enhance the yield of several crops, including for peanuts. However, the peanut plants are different from several other crops as they grow above the ground and the fruiting and ripening happens underground. Moreover, there are several important parts, including pegs, pods, branches, and stem, which are different from many other plants, and they are important to be included in the data collection for accurate phenotyping. However, the thin structure of these parts pose a challenge for the accurate data collection. We explore several possible approaches for the accurate data collection. The first one involves 2D imaging using phone camera, where we took RGB images for defoliated plant as well as the plants with the medium and high foliation level. We observed that this overall approach is efficient and allows us to capture the fine-grained detail with a negligible noise. However, it only allows to capture a single view per sample with high occlusion. Another explored approach was 3D scanning, which was performed using a scanner. This approach allowed us to capture multiple views per sample with less occlusion. However, this approach was expensive in time taking and only allowed us to capture data which is sparse and noisy. Therefore, we were not able to get the fine-grained details which were needed. Hence, the peanut nerf approach is proposed, which is based on neural radiance fields. It aims at deriving benefits from both two-dimensional and three-dimensional data representation. The peanut nerf approach proposes to perform the efficient data collection using 2D RGB images and then applies the 3D reconstruction to obtain a 3D point cloud, which covers fine-grained details with negligible noise as well as information from multiple views per sample. The overall peanut nerf approach consists of collecting the images around the plant. For each of these images, we extract the camera poses along with the rays. The extracted camera poses and the rays along with the images are then used in training the neural radiance fields representing a neural network. This neural network takes 3D coordinate and camera pose as input and outputs the RGB and density values. After performing the neural radiance fields training, we perform the ray tracing to achieve the 2D rendering for novel view synthesis, providing a specific camera pose. So specifically, we query the neural network for RGB and density values, providing a specific camera pose and 3D coordinates on the rays that we are tracing. Repeating this process for several camera poses allows us to obtain a 3D reconstructed point cloud. This obtained 3D point cloud along with the 2D rendered images are then input into the phenotyping model for the 3D pod detection and 3D pod instance segmentation. So delving into the details, we first collect the data and we observe that the peanut plants cannot maintain an upright position. So we very carefully secure them with a cloth dryer in a very careful manner to not damage the structure of the plant, and then we attach it to the ceiling in a careful manner. Afterwards, we take a video around the plant and extract the overlapping images. Well, the overall dataset consists of 12 plants, including the defoliated and foliated samples. For each of the collected video, we extract the overlapping images and the corresponding camera poses. The figures here show the defoliated and foliated plants sample, which was further used in the reconstruction and phenotypic analysis. On the collected data, we perform the radiance fields training. Specifically, we train the vanilla nerve model and nerve factor model, and we observe that after the training, the nerve factor model performs better. The visualization of the nerve factors model inference results show that the fine-grained details for the plant and the different parts of the plants are very well captured. And similar observations are made for the foliated plant, where the details for both the plant and the small parts are captured with high accuracy. And for the quantitative evaluation of the novel view synthesis, we use the metrics PSNR, SSIM, LPIPS, and we observe that the nerve factor model performs better in all of these metrics for both foliated and defoliated cases. After performing the novel view synthesis, we query the neural network to achieve the raw reconstruction results. The obtained reconstruction results show that the small parts are very well captured in most cases, and the noise levels are negligible. Afterwards, we apply the statistical outlier removal to further denoise and clean the point clouds for final reconstruction results. To compare the peanut nerve results with the LiDAR results, we use a LiDAR scanner with the ability to measure plant parts as thin as 2 millimeters, and we specifically scan the plants from the 3 different locations. The obtained scans are then registered using a 3D registration method, and then the obtained 3D point cloud shows higher noise compared to the results that we obtained from the peanut nerve. In addition, even after cleaning, we observe that the point cloud obtained through the LiDAR scanner scanning does not very well cover the small parts. Similar observations are made for the foliated plant, where the noise levels are higher and the small parts are not very well captured. For the quantitative evaluation, we observe that the chamfer we try to estimate the chamfer distance between the manually cleaned point cloud as well as the raw point clouds. In addition, we denoise the raw point clouds and to estimate their distance from the manually cleaned versions. And in all cases, we observe that the chamfer distance for the results from the peanut nerve are around 10 times lower than the results for the LiDAR scans. The obtained 3D reconstruction results and the 2D rendered images are then used for the preliminary phenotypic analysis. And specifically, we train the point voxel convolutional neural network to achieve the 3D pod detection and 3D in pod instance segmentation. The visualization results show satisfactory performance in most of the cases. So for the future work, there are 2 possibilities listed out of all the other possibilities. The first one involves the 3D deep learning, where we can use the 3D reconstructed point cloud for further power segmentation. However, this approach seems to be a bit complex due to the complicated 3D labeling and memory constraints. The other approach is nerve-based, where we can leverage the 2D semantics and integrate them with the nerve methodology. And this approach seems to be more efficient and favorable. Therefore, we aim to explore this one more. As a conclusion, we proposed a peanut nerve pipeline for the 3D reconstruction and observed that the reconstruction result recovers most of the thin plant parts and shows negligible noise. In addition, the reconstruction result was used to train the point voxel convolutional neural network to achieve 3D pod detection and pod instance segmentation. Finally, thank you very much for listening to this presentation. I would very much appreciate any questions, comments, or feedback that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for our first speaker. For the remote presenters, obviously, we don't have something like Gather Town to do like a remote poster session, but we'll leave the Zoom will be active during the poster session break. So either you can try to reach out to them there, or also again, the Rocket Chat is a good place to communicate. Alrighty, our next talk is AgriNav, Autonomous Navigation Framework for Agricultural Robots and Vehicles using Semantic Segmentation and Semantic Line Detection. Oh, you're gonna present here?
Do you have the slides on your lap?
I do, otherwise you can zoom in and present out whatever is easiest.
Yeah, I'll just.
All right, very good. Very good.
So is that a PDF? that we
Yeah,
Actually
do-
have a video.
You need, okay,
And
see,
that
I
gives
wasn't
us-
sure how that was gonna display, because I'm at basic input. I think if you want to do the video, it's going to be best to go off of your.
Oh, okay, yeah, I'll just use my.
Actually, here we go.
Oh.
Let me stop. All right, I still think we're going to need to play from that. We are having some issues getting this to run off the. Yeah, you know what, if can you join the Zoom?
Yeah, I
Okay.
am already.
Okay, let's go ahead and do that, because I think that's going to make it better. She should just be able to request to share. Yeah. Yeah, then it'll hide the other. There we go. Very good. Looks much better on yours.
All right, thank you for the introduction. My name is Yong-Kyu Lee. I'm a PhD student at the Structures Computer Interaction Lab at UCLA. First of all, thank you to all the workshop organizers for their efforts in putting this workshop together and giving us an opportunity to present from. The work that I'll be presenting on today is called AgriNav, which is a monocular vision-based autonomous navigation framework for agricultural robots and vehicles. So here is a rough pipeline of our framework. So given a single RGB image, this image feeds into two machine learning models, the semantic segmentation model and semantic line detection model sequentially. And ultimately, we're able to generate this center line, which serves as the trajectory that our robot should follow. Our work is motivated by these three components. So first, as for lane detection has been around for quite a while now, and it's very important for autonomous driving in urban roads. And we realize that to extend autonomous driving to agricultural fields, this also applies. So lane detection is the first step to autonomous navigation in agricultural fields. And due to the increasing interest in precision agriculture, we realized the importance of being able to operate our machines autonomously. And we also felt the need to develop specific technologies that are tailored for navigation in agricultural fields as opposed to urban roads. And last of all, there are a bunch of resources and benchmarks that we can refer to when we're doing studies in autonomous navigation in urban roads. But unfortunately, that's not the case for the agriculture field. So our work, by providing the open source Agriscapes data set, we wanted to contribute to facilitating the study in this field. So this slide summarizes the most used technology for autonomous navigation in agriculture. The first, for GNSS RTK systems, we see this a lot in field robots. And basically, it provides global localization capabilities up to centimeter level accuracy. But other than its high cost and its region outages problems, we realize that this is mostly suitable for flat terrain operations such as seeding, where there aren't that many obstacles. But we know that this isn't true for our agriculture environment, where we have plants growing out from the ground and they serve as obstacles. And as for LiDARs, considering the obstacles that are present in our agriculture fields, which are mostly composed by leaves and stems, and because our robots are operating much closer to our obstacles, we also realized that this wasn't a optimal solution. And there has been a lot of work devoted to detecting crop rows, either through image processing or using RGBD cameras. And we think that there is a much more simpler way to achieve this, because if we consider humans, for example, when we just see an agricultural field, we can easily identify the crop rows. So our work replaces this part by training a machine learning model that detects the crop rows for us. So here we present AgroNav, which is a monocular vision-based navigation framework with two main components. So as mentioned previously, we have this input image, which feeds into the semantic segmentation model that classifies each pixel present in the image into 8 different classes. And the result then feeds into the semantic line detection model. And this model basically identifies a pair of lines, which are lanes that mark the boundary between the crops and the traversable area. So obviously, the underlying assumption here is that our lanes can be approximated using straight lines. And this simplifying assumption is valid because if we consider our agricultural fields, most of our crop rows are planted in nice, straight, uniform rows. Here is a slide on Agriscapes, which is a data set that we have collected over the last year. We were able to collect 2,000 seconds of high resolution video over 6 different crops with varying levels of crop density. And we anticipate that we'll be adding more data to this data set. So diving deep into the first model of our pipeline, the semantic segmentation model, our contribution lies in these 2 areas, the model and label reorganization. So as for the model, because our ultimate goal is to implement this on a real robotic system, our model has to be lightweight enough so that this could be run locally using the robot's hardware. So to that end, we trained 4 different models, 3 of which can be operated in real time. And the idea is, so the VIT adapter, that's our heavier model, which is also more accurate. But we use this model, and after training this parent model, we inference images on this model, which will create another data set that we can use to train our lighter weight model. And as for the second main contribution, although there isn't a open source segmentation data set available for agricultural fields, we realized that if we just merge some of the labels that are present in the cityscapes data set and only keep the ones that we really need for agricultural fields, it surprisingly performs well. And we demonstrate that by using this trick, we were able to achieve more data than we have, use more data than we have collected. So going to the pipeline, so first we train the parent model, which is a VIT adapter. We pre-trained this on the label reorganized cityscapes. We also manually annotated 120 images, and we also use that to train this model. And once this model has been trained, we inference this on 3,800 images, and a human inspector selects 1,100 images to form the human in the loop self-supervised data set. And once this is done, this along with the label reorganized cityscapes and our manually annotated data is being used to train our lighter weight model. And to demonstrate the performance, here we have some results. Obviously, the VIT adapter is our best performing model, but as you can see, the margins, the difference between that and the lighter weight models isn't that big. And on the other hand, if we look at the real-time performance of our smaller models compared to VIT adapter, it's actually a significant difference, which we believe will be very important when we have to implement this on our robots. And the next set of results on the right demonstrate the effects of using this self-supervised data set. So as mentioned previously, we're using a VIT adapter to acquire more data. And when we compare the cases where our child models were trained with and without these inference images, it actually shows a big improvement in performance. Now I'll talk about the second component of our framework, which is the semantic line detection model. And here, basically, the goal is to train a model that can identify a pair of straight boundary lines. So to train this model, we borrow the model presented in the Deephoff transform paper. And the idea behind semantic line detection is, so we want to detect only the prominent semantically meaningful lines of images. And when we use techniques like edge detection, it's going to look something like this. So it will be a messy image, which would need some post-processing to make meaning out of. But when comparing this to semantic line detection, it only outputs the most meaningful images, which is perfect for our application. And for our case, obviously, the most important lines would be our lanes, the lines that mark the boundary between the crops and the traversable area. So we have 400 annotated images, and our annotation just consists of 2 lines, and each line is represented with a pair of pixel coordinates that mark the endpoints of that line. And another interesting thing we do is rather than training this on raw RGB image, since we have our semantic segmentation model prior to this, we actually blend our RGB images with the segmentation mask to train our line detection model. And as you can see in the results, by using the blended images, this actually resulted in significant improvement in performance. And these are just some sample images that verify the performance of our entire pipeline. So here we inference our model on different crops taken at different angles, and we were able to achieve good results in identifying the lanes and also the center. And as for the conclusion of our work, we presented a simple monocular vision based autonomous navigation framework. And we also contributed to the open source dataset Agroscape. And our future work, which would be to implement this navigation system on an actual field robot, and we actually have an in-house robot built at our lab, and we hope to begin the experiments in the upcoming month. I'd also like to acknowledge our funding agencies for their financial support and our collaborators as well. Yeah, that concludes my presentation. Thank you all for your attention.
Time for one or two questions.
Yes. I thought it was pretty clever to use that blended image. So if I understood that correctly, it was taking the image and then taking the lines and then actually merging the two into one image. Is that right?
So the blended image is actually it's the RGB image and the segmentation map. So if you look at these images here, these are colored according to their classes, right?
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah, so
Gotcha. And then and then you can find the lines off of that then. Okay.
right, yeah.
How did you think of the idea to do that?
So first we thought obviously the most simple way to achieve this was to get rid of the semantic segmentation. So if our semantic line detection model trains well, even on RGB images, there is actually no need for the segmentation. But we just thought about ways to improve the accuracy, and we realized if we just provide the model with color cues, it would help the model learn better. And in our case, it did.
I see. Thank you.
One more.
Have you done much to train the model on kind of some of the edge cases where there's missing parts of the road, where there's a lot of weeds in the field, and how does the line segmentation?
So we did. So first of all, the data that we collected, the agroscapes data almost consists of nice images like this. But the only problems that we ran into when we trained the line detection model were actually for the aerial images. So if we compare, I don't know if you can see my mouth here. Yeah, so if we compare this image to this image, this was taken by the robot and this was taken by the drone. So as for the images taken by the robot, it's very clear there are only two lanes that are present in the image, but that wasn't the case for our drone images. So for this, there can be two set of lines here and also here. And those were the only error cases that we ran into, but not with we didn't run into any problems with when we had parts of the road chopped off.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Great, now we'll move on to the spotlights. Our first spotlight is ECA CompNext, a rice leaf disease identification model based on CompNext. And I believe this is remote.
Hello.
Hello, yep, go ahead and share. Looks good.
Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Wang Xiaoqi, and I'm an undergraduate student from China Agricultural University. Today, I will present the paper, ECA CompNext, a rice leaf disease identification model based on CompNext. My presentation is organized in the following 6 sections. Rice is one of the most important human food crops with abundant edible, economic, and medicinal values. The emergence and development of computer vision and deep learning techniques provide a new solution to the problem of identification and diagnosis of plant disease. The main research challenge is to identify multiple categories of rice leaf disease with high accuracy. In addition, the lack of publicly available rice leaf disease identification datasets for model training and testing, and the variations of images, environmental backgrounds, and caption quality also make it difficult to train an accurate model. In our study, we completed data collection and data augmentation first. After that, we accomplish the model construction and model training. Finally, we test the model's performance on rice leaf disease identification dataset. We combine the data from the internet and other publicly available datasets for data aggregation. 7 types of rice leaves are included in the dataset. These are healthy, Hisper, brown spot, leaf blast, bacterial blight, bacterial streak, and sneeze blight. We finish the data augmentation in 5 different ways and complete preprocessing in 2 ways to improve the generality of rice leaf disease identification model. And the dataset contains 4,523 raw images and their category labels. The proposed ECA Connect is an architecture for identifying 6 types of rice leaves and healthy rice leaves based on the Connect network. We added the ECA attention model to improve the model's feature extraction capability and also adopt the fine-tuning approach of transfer learning to improve the training efficiency and reduce the time cost. The fine-tuning method facilitates the learning of parameters by freezing the convolutional layers of the pre-trained model that are used to extract generic features to update the remaining convolutional layers and fully connect layers. And we added a channel attention mechanism called ECA module, moving the convolutional layers. It can target particular parts of the data and assign different weights to different input components to filter out the significant parts among a large amount of information. We test the model on the rice leaf disease identification dataset to evaluate its performance. The confusion matrix of the identification results and the precision recall F1 score and their average for each type of leaf in the testing dataset are as follows. By the comparison experiments, we find that ECA Connect model improves the classification accuracy on the rice leaf disease identification dataset compared to other state-of-art models. And ablation experiments show that the ECA attention model and fine-tuning can optimize the network structure. In our study, we proposed a new CL model called ECA Connect for rice leaf disease identification. It improves the disease rice leaves classification and identification accuracy in complex backgrounds. And we also construct the rice leaf disease identification dataset that contains 4,523 real-world images. Based on the similarity of the diagnostic methods for disease leaf of different crops, the proposed model has broad application prospects and can be extended to disease identification of other crops. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. I'll get time for one question if there is any. Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
Does the data set also contain like healthy leaves or just rice leaves with disease?
Were you able to hear the question? No, maybe not. Let me go find. I think the question was whether the data set is including healthy leaves in addition to the disease leaf. Like, are you differentiating between just any disease as well as how, like, is healthy a class, or is it just types of disease, knowing that it is disease? It looks like we're not able to get the reconnect with the speaker. Okay, we'll move on to the next spotlight. Cherry picker, semantic skeletonization, and topological reconstruction of cherry trees. You want to zoom back? Okay, very good.
All right, welcome everybody. My name is Lucas Meyer. I'm from the Friedrich Alexander University in Nuremberg, Germany. And today I want to talk about cherry picker semantic skeletonization and topological reconstruction of cherry trees. So what's my topic about? So cherry picker in a nutshell is that we try to compute from a set of images a intermediate representation of a point cloud. And with the help of the point cloud, we try to compute a skeleton or either a topology of the tree to then compute the road of tree and additionally use it as a map for locating the position of leaves, blossoms, and fruits. And the contribution of my paper is that we propose an automatic reconstruction pipeline for computing from a set of images, a skeleton or a topology. And the second contribution is that we propose a Aruka marker-based scale factor estimation to overcome the scale factor ambiguity in multi-view stereo. And the third contribution is that we propose semantic Laplacian-based contraction, that is a variant of the Laplacian-based contraction algorithm. So first, we compute from a set of images the point cloud of our territory and additionally extracting the extrinsic camera parameters by using ColMap. And as a next step, we try to orient our point cloud as our point cloud is arbitrarily oriented in space by simply computing or trying to arrange our point cloud to the XY plane by simply fitting a plane using Ransec in our point cloud. Additionally, we extract the region of interest by using a axis-aligned bounding box using our extrinsic camera parameters. And additionally, we propose the Aruka marker-based scale factor estimator by simply placing a Aruka marker into our scene. When we try to detect the Aruka marker in a set of images, then we try to detect the Aruka marker in the images and then casting a ray from the origin of our camera parameters through the corners of our Aruka marker. And with a set of lines, we know the correspondences between our line set and compute the 3D location of our Aruka marker in 3D space. And as we know the actual size of our Aruka marker, we were able to compute a scale factor to obtain a metric point cloud. Additionally, with our oriented and metric point cloud, we utilize a dynamic graph convolution neural network to separate our tree from our environment and additionally compute classes for the tree trunk and the tree branches. And with the help of this semantic pipeline, we utilize the Laplacian-based contraction algorithm. And the Laplacian-based contraction algorithm, in a nutshell, simply uses or contracts or shrinks our point cloud into the negative direction of our normal vector to compress it to a 1D curved skeleton. And problem of the Laplacian-based contraction algorithm that suffers from male contraction at areas where we have different diameters, specifically between a thick branch and small branches. And this leads to overcontraction and undercontraction in the skeleton. Additionally, we suffer from occlusion artifacts, and this results in some elliptical artifacts, which you can see in the next slide. And therefore, we introduce the semantic Laplacian-based contraction algorithm, where we infuse our semantic information about our tree trunk and the branches to weight the contraction differently for the trunk and the branches. And as you can see here on the bottom, the LBC suffers as those occlusion artifacts, the elliptical artifacts, and our semantic Laplacian-based contraction algorithm is able to overcome those problems. And with the computed skeleton of our tree trunk, we can compute with the help of a minimum spanning tree, a graph-like representation of our skeleton, and thus obtain the topology of our cherry tree. So thanks for your attention. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me at the poster session. Thank you.
Thank you. Great. Next up is mushroom segmentation and 3D pose estimation from point clouds using fully convolutional geometric features and implicit pose encoding. Yeah. Yeah. Sorry,
I have the full screen or it will be, okay,
we'll try. Let's see. That work, sort of works.
okay.
Very good. There you go.
So hello everyone, I'm Joseph Nat from National Technical University of Athens, and I will present you our work on the mushroom segmentation and data pose estimation from point clouds using full convolutional geometric features and implicit pose encoding. So the problem, as the title says, is mushroom segmentation and pose estimation. The input are point clouds, typically acquired from multi-view RGBT sensors. This is a setup that we used for some of these. It uses two real sense cameras, and you have some mushrooms that you try to grasp them with a robotic grasper. So the challenges here are to lack of 3D annotation. It's very difficult to manually annotate something like that, and that some of the self-template 3D pose estimators have, for example, use interest point in order to find the pose, and mushrooms are very symmetric objects, and we cannot use these algorithms. So our contribution here is that we train a novel system on synthetic scenes that we create. We propose an implicit pose encoding in order to facilitate the pose estimation and the instance segmentation. And from this encoding, we have a byproduct, a very straightforward instance segmentation algorithm, as we will see. So, about the synthetic data, I will not go into detail. We use a single mushroom template. We have some affine transformation there on that. We have some local deformations on each surface, and we put a lot of them in our plane and do a simple basic collision checking. We also have some ground augmentation, like we have some surface that it's not flat, and we have some distractors, as you can see, some cubes or cylinders, in order to have some distraction on the plane. And finally, because we need 3D point clouds that are realistic enough, we have different voxel sizes in order to discretize them, and we use a hidden point removal from other views. So this is the overview of the algorithm. I will go into detail in each step. First, the implicit, the backbone extracts geometric features from 3D point clouds, and for this we use a previous work called full convolutional geometric features that use sparse 3D convolutions. We use this in order to predict this implicit pose encoding, as we call it, that has three different targets. First, the simple one, existent values, if it's foreground or background. Then the residual center, the difference from each point to the center of the mushroom, and we regress on that. And finally, the rotational value. The rotational value is a scalar value from 0 to 1. 1 is when I am on the top of the cap of the mushroom, and 0 when I'm on the periphery of the cap of the mushroom. Then we do the intersegmentation very easily. If we can predict for each mushroom point the center, when we do this regression, we can collapse to the center of each mushroom in a small neighborhood. So we can use a mode-seeking clustering algorithm like MinShift and quickly separate all the mushrooms. This is a very easy application for instance segmentation. And then for each mushroom, we use an assumption of a symmetrical ellipsoid and the orientation value as well as the ellipsoid equation in order to fully calculate the pose of the mushroom. So this is some results on real data acquired from a setting that have from the start. You can see that it's a multi-view, two views to be precise. As you can see here, most of the mushrooms are very, very accurately detected. And this is an important thing here. We can see that we can also do single view generalization from only one view. On the right is the proposed algorithm, and it understands even when a large part of the mushroom is missing, it understands the pose very well, while using a typical algorithm like ICP base does not do that. So that's all. Thank you. You can find me in the post session for details and questions.
Thank you so much. Next is another mushroom talk, a realistic synthetic mushroom scene data set.
Exactly. Yeah, it's me again. So, okay. But this is a job primarily done by a PhD students in our lab, Daphne and Augustopoulou. So thank you for that. And this work is titled as a realistic synthetic mushroom scene data set. So what's the point here? As I said before, a big problem here on mushrooms is the annotation. It's you can have very dense mushrooms, regions of mushrooms, and it's very difficult for a human to annotate them. So we like to create some realistic mushroom scenes that have like clusters of mushrooms and have the annotation for that. We essentially created around 15,000 images of synthetic mushroom scenes. We can get 2D annotation like bounded box segmentation masks. Also, we can get the 3D annotation, which is very difficult to do manually, like 3D poses and bounding boxes on the 3D plane. We developed this in a multi-stage pipeline. First, we generate 3D scenes, then we render into different 2D images from different views, and finally, we produce realistic images using diffusion models. Here, the basic 3D scene is created in a similar way to the previous work. We get some template, we deform the mushroom template in various ways. We also have a soil and deform it in various ways. The important thing here is that we also add texture. So we have some texture from the mushroom, some texture from the ground. And with that, we create some scenes 3D. Then we have to render them. We have a large variety of viewpoints.
Wait, can we see the screen?
Okay.
Sorry. Yeah, I think that let me switch. Sorry about that. I've been a little lost. Can you see it now? Are we able to see the slides now?
Yep.
Okay,
Yes.
sorry about that.
Sorry. Yeah, so there are some images from the 3D scenes that are rendered from a very different viewpoints in order to create like variations. And then we render them using Open3D, some technical issues. So the core idea of this work is to use recent development on diffusion models in order to create realistic scenes that respect the shape, the pose of the mushrooms, in order to have realistic images with annotations that are created in the very first rendered environment, which is very easy. So for this, we use the control net network that's based or like on normal maps or in a head edge estimation maps. And with that extra input, it can, and using an extra prompt, it can create images very similar to the initial one that respect some structure in the image, like position, shape, and pose. So an important thing here that can like discuss in the poster is what prompts we will use. We use different prompts of mushrooms, like brown mushroom, agaricus mushrooms, and different soils. Our colleagues, agriculture colleagues, do not like the grass case because mushrooms do not grow on that. But when you want to try to train a system, it's easy because it's a background, an extra background that tries to find the shapes and everything. So okay, we are sorry for that. So and the final conclusion, like we have exploited the asset in our very first experiment on instant segmentation. We trained on masked CNN, and we also tested on real synthetic, on a real data set of mushrooms collected from mushroom farms, industrial mushroom farms, which was the goal of the project. So that's all. And of course, the realistic setting were much better some metrics. That's all. Thank you.
Next up, we have MTL SegFormer, multitask learning with transformers for semantic segmentation and precision agriculture. I think this one's remote, is that correct?
Yeah, this one is, it's me.
Yep.
Cool. Let me share my screen here. Hopefully. Okay, good.
Yep.
That's good. Nice. Right. So my name is Scaler. I am a lecturer at the University of Stirling. I'm sorry that I'm not there today, but my visa was not processed in time. I'm here to present our work, MTL SegFormer, multitask learning with transformer for semantic segmentation in precision agriculture. So different from standard methods that try to learn based on one unique task, multitask learning learns from multiple tasks at the same time. So essentially, they're trying to exploit the complementary information from these tasks in order to improve the final outcome. Besides improving the outcome, multitask learning can also be related to data efficiency, faster conversions, and also the reduction of the overfitting. Although really interesting, and despite the recent success of transformers, most multitask learning methods are still based on convolutional networks. There's only a few methods using transformers and none of those for precision agriculture. So in this work, we propose a multitasking semantic segmentation method based on transformers for precision agriculture. Essentially, our method allows the sharing of the features between the tasks through the transformers. We also propose two new data sets for multitask learning in precision agriculture. So talking a little bit about the method, the encoder is composed of 4 transformer blocks. Each one of those blocks is composed of several self-attention layers responsible for combining the queries, keys, and values, followed by several mixed feed-forward networks. And in the end of each one of these transformer blocks, we have the overlap patch merging, which is responsible for merging the patches and generate the feature maps. And observe that because of this merging process, the feature maps generated by the blocks have different resolution. And in order to aggregate different information from different resolutions, we send all these feature maps to the decoder. In the decoder, we receive these feature maps and we process them using a layer that normalizes everything in terms of channels and resolution. And then we concatenate all those feature maps. After that, we further process the feature maps using different branches. Here, each branch is related to a task. In this example here, I have 2 branches because of 2 tasks. So essentially here, each branch is going to be responsible for learning features or information related to one specific task. However, in the middle of this process, we have a common shared layer called multitask transformer block. In this layer, we have several self-attention layers followed by mixed feed-forward networks. But the difference here is that each self-attention layer is going to receive the keys and values from one task, but the queries from the other task. So essentially what's happening here is that one task is querying the other one to try to understand what the other task knows about that former one. After doing that, we further process the feature maps using more layers until the final outcome is produced. So that's essentially our method. And as I said, we also, besides the method, we also propose 2 new data sets. One is called crop line dataset. And essentially here we want to segment the crop lines and also the gaps. And the second data set is called the defoliation data set. And here we want to segment the leaves. And we also want to segment the gaps left here because of pests. Here is our general results. You can check more results on our paper, but here's just the summary of the results. And we can see that the proposed, on top here we have the results for the cropline dataset, and on the bottom we have for the defoliation dataset. And we can see here that the proposed method outperformed state-of-the-art baselines in both datasets and both tasks. All right. I also included here some qualitative results for the defoliation dataset. You can find qualitative results for the cropline dataset on our paper, but this one here is really interesting, mainly the bottom example, because even though there is a huge gap here in this leaf, we can see that our method was capable to exploit information from multiple tasks to extrapolate everything and create a very good segmentation of this part, very different from the other baselines. So to summarize everything, in this paper, we propose a new multitask semantic segmentation method based on transformer. And we also propose 2 new data sets for multitask learning precision agriculture. If you want to know more about this project and about other projects that we are working on, and if you want to access the data sets and also the code, you can access our website. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, and then our final spotlight talk on the real-time semantic segmentation of aphid clusters in the wild.
There you go. Hi, everyone. My name is Ryan Rahman, and I'm a master's student at the Toronto Metropolitan University. And today I'll be representing our paper on the real-time semantic segmentation of aphid clusters in the wild. So it is estimated around 37% of crops worldwide are lost to pest damage, 13% of which are attributed to insects, one species of which are aphids. And so it's pretty clear that aphids are not only a threat to crops and rural families, but also to the global food security as well. And with recent advances in small automated vehicles such as drones, there's been a push towards automating pest control as well to maximize yields by more efficiently applying pesticides, as well as minimizing the exposure of these pesticides to the crops. And since aphids are actually localized to specific areas in the field, it's actually unnecessary to apply pesticides to the whole field, which could cause environmental pollution as well as rising costs. And so this is why we explored the idea of performing real-time semantic segmentation of aphid clusters. And detecting aphids is actually very difficult because of how small their individual insects are. And oftentimes they're crowded together into groups or clusters. And previous works have focused more so on detecting these individual insects rather than clusters. But to more adequately assess the infestation levels, we saw that it was more adequate or more appropriate to count these clusters. And previous methods have trained on ideal images, which are vastly different from the natural setting in which they take place. And we also wanted to focus more so on the real-time aspect. And so we introduced an aphid data set with over 54,000 annotated images for semantic segmentation. In this data set, we considered 6 or more closely located aphids as a cluster. And we collected these images over 2 seasons from a sorghum field using a 3-camera setup for 3 different heights. And we generated patches at 3 different scales with a 10% overlap, and we split it all into 10 sets for 10-fold cross-validation. On the right, you can see some examples of what these different scales look like, as well as their ground truths. Here we can also see some of the dataset statistics showing us the image share from the different heights, as well as the different scales at which we generated the patches. We can also see the mask area percentage showing us that these aphid clusters actually only take place at a very small area of the whole image.
usually an average of around 2.45%. So not only do we want to work with high resolution images, but we also want to achieve real-time speeds. And so we used 4 different real-time models to achieve a benchmark. And then we compared these to non-real-time models to get an idea of achieving the real-time speeds and that cost. So our experiments included training the real-time models to achieve a benchmark, training the non-real-time models to get a comparison of the speed and the accuracy, as well as comparing the training across the different scales to get an idea of whether a multi-scale approach would improve the performance. On the right, you can see 2 of the 3 different scales at which patches were generated and how their overlap takes place. And usually we found that since these aphid clusters only take place over a small amount of the images, there was a large class imbalance. And so class weights were also factored in. So here we can see the real-time results from the real-time models. And so out of our results, HRNet was able to, small HRNet was able to achieve the the highest MIOU, while FastSCNN was able to achieve the fastest inference speeds. And when comparing these 2 non-real-time models, we found that PSPNet was able to achieve the highest MIOU. On the right, on the left, you can see a comparison of the real and non-real-time models, and we can see how they compare in terms of their accuracy for MIOU, as well as their inference needs in terms of frames per second. Here we can see a comparison of how well the real-time models performed when we trained on the individual scales and compare them to the multi-scale approach. It was shown that the multi-scale training approach did provide a general increase in the performance. Here, I also included some segmentation results to have an idea of what these models segmented, how these models segmented the aphid clusters. And we can see how these results look like at the different scales, the largest scale, the medium scale, as well as the smallest scale. So in conclusion, through a slight decrease in the accuracy, we were able to achieve real-time speeds on this data set. And out of all the real-time models that we looked at, FastSCNN actually emerged as the overall better performing model, not only because of its high speed and good accuracy, but also because of its efficient nature and how it might be used in embedded systems. And we were also able to see that accuracy across the scales show that a multi-scale training approach leads to a general increase in the performance. Thank you. And if you have any questions, please feel free to come ask me during the poster session. Thank you for your time.
Thank you to everyone who submitted papers and participated in the review process. That is a big piece of the workshop, so we appreciate everyone's participation. Now we're going to move to our next invited talk by Kristen Donna. Is she on? There you go, I see. Professor at Rutgers University in Electrical and Computer Engineering.
Yes, thank you. Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Give me a moment to share my screen. Okay, everybody see the screen? So my talk is, okay, everybody see the screen now? I just want to make sure. Great. My talk is entitled AI on the Bog, Agriculture Evaluation with Time Series Drone Imaging. Here's my research team. So myself, Peter Udemans, 2 researchers from Siemens, Aditi and Ben, and 3 Rutgers students, Perry, Faith, and Jack, and Perry has just recently graduated. So we are doing this work funded by the USDA, the Food and Agriculture Cyber Informatics Tools area, FACT, and our title is Deep Learning for Image-Based Agriculture Evaluation. The main idea is to incorporate data science and machine learning to extract knowledge about cranberry crops. This is a list of our publications that I'll refer to a little bit in the talk, but here they are in one list for you to see the details of the research that we've done in the past few years under this grant. Now, let me take a moment to talk about New Jersey. So New Jersey has a terrible rap when we talk about it when I talk about it in a national audience, and its reputation is one of an industrial, overcrowded, very densely populated state. But what is not well known is that New Jersey pinelands, also referred to as the Pine Barrens, is huge and takes up a significant part of the state. So it's over 1 million acres. And in terms of land, it's actually 22% of New Jersey's land area. And the Pine Barrens are basically pine trees. It's very sandy soil, exactly the type of soil that grows cranberries well. So our state is the third largest producer in the nation of cranberries. Our state, my state. So this work is in collaboration with P.E. Marucci Cranberry and Blueberry Research Center. This is a part of Rutgers University. It's a substation of a program called the New Jersey Agricultural Experiment Station. So New Jersey, the Garden State, is the third largest producer, as I mentioned. We're behind Wisconsin and Massachusetts. Now, for cranberries, there is a major risk of overheating. And the problem with overheating is you can have sudden large crop loss. And of course, with climate change, that risk is getting larger. If cranberries essentially rot if their internal temperature reaches about 105 degrees Celsius for any length of time. Now I'm going to show you some pictures in a moment about cranberries in the bog itself before harvesting. And you'll see that there is a leaf canopy. And the cranberries under the leaf canopy are shaded from direct sun and are not very vulnerable. But the ones that are above the canopy are unshaded and very vulnerable. Additionally, ripe cranberries are vulnerable to overheating. So on a very hot day in the middle of August, when that internal berry temperature reaches about 105 degrees, there's not much time to waste before the grower can have enormous crop loss. So there is this irrigation management decision that I'll talk about in a moment. It's just some visuals. This is an image that I took during the cranberry harvest in the cranberry bogs in Chatsworth, New Jersey. You can see they're quite beautiful. New Jersey cranberry bog at harvest. This is an aerial view of the area. During harvest time, you might know that cranberries are harvested by flooding the bog, and the cranberries rise to the top. And then you can just about see it in this area, a region, kind of a hose-like thing delineates the cranberries and pulls them together and to one side for harvesting. Okay, so the major research challenges from a computer vision point of view is cranberry segmentation and counting. So the application goal is to monitor cranberry crop risk. I mentioned that it's those cranberries that are above the leaves that are directly exposed to the sun that are at most risk. And we want to do this in a weekly supervised way. The deep learning networks do much better with supervision, but clicking on cranberries or delineating the segmented cranberries is very time consuming. So we work towards a weekly supervised approach so that the cranberry grower who doesn't want to annotate their data can use previously trained networks. There's also a research challenge that I'm not going to talk about as much, which is cloud tracking and prediction. There the application goal is to monitor the real-time conditions for irrigation decisions. And the third research challenge is albedo models over time, cranberry ripening. And here the application goal is to assess which cranberries ripen the fastest, because those are the ones that are most at risk to overheating. And that will help the understanding when the cranberries reached the darkest red portion of their appearance will help the growers in their irrigation decisions because different bogs have different varieties. Okay, this is the drone that we used for imaging. So our data set we've collected over 3 years' time, and this data set is being made publicly available. And it's over 3 years' time, but within a season, it's over several weeks. So you get to see how the cranberries grow. And it's done in a stratified sampling approach. So 20 waypoints are chosen over the bog. Okay, so let's see. I'm sorry, one moment. Yes, okay, so this is the drone for imaging. I mentioned that. Here's a picture of the cranberry crop, and it's zoomed in so you can see how the cranberries can either be above the canopy or very often nestled below the canopy and below those leaves. Okay. So the management of berry overheating. The question is to irrigate or not. And the growers need to make this decision not only because of the water resource, but also because when the irrigation happens, you greatly increase your chance of rotten berries. So here's the irrigation decision. We have a little cartoon with the balancing act that these growers have to handle. Over irrigation actually increases the chance of fruit rot. So it's not just the cost of the water resource, but you increase this chance of fruit rot. Then, of course, if you don't irrigate, you have the chance of overheating, which increases the fruit rot. So it's truly a balancing act. We had advisory board meetings with the growers, and they talked about specific days where they got into their trucks and went around to the other bogs and decided together whether they should irrigate or not. So it's this optimization is happening real time. And this is an area that I think computer vision can truly help, and this is what we're doing. So the cranberry aerial imagery data set, CRADE, has been obtained over 3 years. It's the largest repository of cranberry images, 290 hours of annotation efforts. And we've also involved interns from the ACCC drone program. This is a local community college that has a very nice drone program and pilot licensing program, and they were involved in this effort as well. It's publicly available. Here's some of the stats, which I don't really have time to go into. So in addition to the cranberry segmentation and counting, I'll go a little bit into those algorithms. The main goal is to predict the volume of the crop at risk of overheating, and this allows growers to protect specific fields. If the number that comes out of the computer vision algorithm is large, then that field needs to be protected, and the irrigation decision can focus on the high economic value fields. We've developed methods in both weekly supervised semantic segmentation, both segmentation and fruit counting. We've also developed, I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about this, but an end-to-end prediction of future sun irradiance, and that was in collaborations with Siemens Research. Here is a quick overview of the weekly supervised pipeline. It's weekly supervised because we're not using full segmentations, but rather just point clicks, which are much faster to do. But there were annotation hours devoted to these point clicks. And we have a way to change those point clicks into pseudomasks. We have a method of incorporating 3 different losses and an encoder-decoder network, which handles the segmentation. The 3 losses, a segmentation loss, a split loss, a shape loss. The idea is that the segmentation loss encourages fidelity to ground truth. The split loss discourages blob overlap, and the shape loss encourages blob convexity. Here's some examples of what the images look like and what the segmentation masks look like. So you can see these are challenging things to segment. And a few more examples. Here's our cranberry analysis workflow. So with the sky images, we're able to predict the irradiance and the internal temperature and the future internal temperature. With the aerial imagery from the drones, we're able to count the cranberries and run it through the segment. After running it through the segmentation module, this gives us a count density map. So these exposure metrics can be given to the farmer, so the farmer knows where there is a high count density and at what time the predicted future cranberry temperature will be high. So this is the workflow that we are working towards. It's not something that they're using in real time now, but the long-term goal of our efforts. Okay, so the third bullet item here was albedo models over time. So let me talk about these rather quickly. So this RGB plot of cranberry region, you know, what we see is the number of points, number of pixels at a particular color in this plot. And if we look at different varieties, right, so there are 3 varieties shown here over time, over the growing season that you're seeing in the video. The 3 varieties are Crimson Queen, Mullica Queen, and Haynes. And you can see there is a variation in how many dark red pixels happen with time. And this allows, this analysis allows a grower to look at how each variety, compare the different varieties, and to see how the ripening is happening. And the issue is that, excuse me, varieties that ripen too quickly are more vulnerable to overheating. Now, this type of analysis can be used with high throughput phenotyping. In high throughput phenotyping, there are multiple plots, you see each one of these here, where different varieties are planted and subject to different conditions. And these are very difficult to analyze by the eye, but the kind of methods that we're developing will enable high throughput phenotyping so that decisions of crop conditions and crop genotypes can be made. So your phenotype is a set of observable characteristics resulting from the interaction of the crop genotype and the environment. Here we're showing numerous plots. The image that I just showed was about 3,500 plots per hectare. And you can see the kind of high throughput that's needed, and automated AI-based methods are needed there. For our cripe ripening assessment, the data was the CRADE 2022 weekly inspection of multiple cranberry bogs over the late July, September growing season. Here's a list of the varieties. Here are the imaging dates. You can see they start from late July, where you have a lot of green cranberries, to September. We did photometric calibration, so that's important. You can't compare these pixel values unless they're photometrically calibrated. So segmentation, photometric calibration, computer ripeness ratio, and identify the best variety, the best variety in terms of ripening, and identify the overheating risk. And here are some of the segmentation examples for the early green cranberries. Here's four rows, each showing cranberries getting brighter red over the season. So this is the early July dates. This is the September dates. And you can see that indeed they do change in their ripeness signatures. And the Haynes is one that ripens very quickly. Stevens is one that ripens slowly. And Stevens is the slowest variety to ripen. Haynes is the fastest. So in conclusion, computer vision, of course, we know has significant impact in precision agriculture. And our algorithm for cranberry segmentation, this SSS network that's trained on real cranberry data sets, has numerous applications that will impact the grower. Our pipeline for albedo analysis over time helps determine ripening signatures for cranberry varieties, and the applications include irrigation management, real-time decision-making, ripening assessment, crop variety selection and optimization, and eventually high-throughput phenotyping. Beyond cranberries, we expect this to impact wine grapes, olives, blueberries, and maize. Thank you very much. Questions?
We have time for one or two questions. Okay, go ahead. You just talk to the mic.
Can you give more information about the calibration of color in color?
Mm-hmm. Yes, we use the gray strip to determine the operating characteristic for each day, and then we assume linearity, which our measurements seem to show a reasonable assumption, and we fit that line and calibrate them so that they all have the same operating characteristics, the mapping of intensity to pixel value. So each day the drone flies over that Macbeth chart that's in the field.
We need several features because how often you have this calibration system, and it is only taking into account the gray patches.
It is only taking into account the gray patches at this time. We have the color card data to do a more sophisticated calibration, but at this time we're just looking at the gray card.
You didn't have time for the moment to compare if using only the gray patches or the full color was getting more better information on it. It didn't have
yeah, we didn't include that in the calibration, but that's a good point.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you again to our speakers. At this time, we'll move into the poster session. Again, we're in 195 to 202 downstairs in the big poster room. I know it's a little bit of a hike there and back. And then we'll come back at 10:35 Pacific time. I will keep the Zoom open so that for the speakers who are remote, if you want to jump on and try to talk to them that way. Otherwise, there's the Rocket Chat on the virtual site. See you back here in about 35 minutes. Thanks, everybody. Try it again.
Kristen, are you still available for questions just while this system is set up? It's okay. I can join.
I think you're already sharing, so you should be good.
Yeah, you sure? Thursday.
Yeah, because you're sharing off of your screen here, I believe,
Yes,
right?
yes.
Yeah.
But this is sharing, okay.
Yep. So welcome back to the second half of our session. We'll have 3 more invited talks to conclude the workshop. First up will be Paula Thomas. Can everybody before we take up, can everyone on this on the Zoom see the slides and hear us okay? Yes.
Yes.
Yes. All right. Very good. Floor is yours.
Okay. Okay, good morning, everyone, and thanks for attending this session today. I'm really glad that you come back from the poster session. I was a little afraid about that. But thank you. Thank you for, Jennifer, for having me here, organizers of this workshop. It is great to talk about what kind of challenges and opportunities we have in agriculture and computer vision. So let me introduce myself first. My name is Paula Ramos. I am computer vision and machine learning PhD. My background is in electronic and electrical engineer. And I have been working in agriculture for more than 17 years. I work in the National Federation of Coffee Growers of Colombia, South America, 14 years there, and 3 years in the North Carolina State University. And now I am AI evangelist at Intel. So I'm so glad to show you today and talk about how we can face challenges and opportunities using smart IoT and low-cost devices to bridge the technology gap in agriculture. So the question that I want to answer with all of you today is, it is possible to create a simple, easy to use, and low-cost system using computer vision solutions in agriculture? And I'm engineer. I am engineer. I will say yes, it is possible. I can do all things. But we need to have into account all the barriers that we have from prototyping ideas to move those ideas to production. So we need to have this clear. I don't have doubts that AI will solve different kind of challenges such as labor shortage, climate change. AI could support farmers with decision-making tools or real-time data analysis. But also we need to think about that AI could be over-complex to farmers. I'm talking about small-scale farmers. So now the question is how we can close the gap in between technology and users. So we are talking about users, could be farmers, scientists, biologists, agronomists, also stakeholders. And we will talk about how smart IoT and low-cost devices could help with this. And I want to bring these 3 images here, because when I was working in Colombia, I had a bunch of lessons. So in Colombia and South America, many farmers don't have money. Unfortunately, they lack access to advanced technologies and modern farming. And as a researcher, I need to be super creative to use the things that I have on my hands. And also we know Colombia was not well connected. If we needed to order a chip, we needed to wait 3 months or 6 months to have that chip with us. So I'm talking about how we can use edge computing for small farmers. So in that case, I was using microprocessor for a coffee sorting machine to process 50 fruits per second, just with a microprocessor and a color sensor. And having more than 95% of efficiency in this machine. Or a robot harvesting tool with an embedded camera to process a little image with fuzzy logic. I'm talking about, early 2000s in the first machine, and 2010s in the second image, The problem with these 2 machines is that we needed to have an expert managing the machine, handle the machine. And unfortunately, this is another gap that we have in agriculture, that the farmers, they don't have a great education, unfortunately. Most of them, they don't have elementary school. And how we can put this technology in their hands. So we need to teach them how the technology is working and try to make this easy to use and easy to maintain. When I was facing that problem,
because that was an adoption problem. I was thinking, which tool they have that they know pretty well how that is working. And I think that all of you know about that technology. I'm talking about cell phone, a smartphone. A smartphone is a small computer where we have a lot of sensors there. We have gyroscope, GPS, image camera. Also, we can process the information there. So I'm so glad to hear the talk from Christine about cranberry, because cranberry is so similar to corn. And I was working to estimate the biomass, the volume of the fruits with 3D reconstruction, making videos with a cell phone, using cloud computing. But I'm moving that cloud computing to the edge computing, just counting the coffee fruits with 2D information. And that was really successful. So my lesson here was, it is possible, yes. It is possible to have a smart IoT and low-code system, yes. We need to have edge computing for farmers with simple algorithms using machine learning, classic machine learning algorithms, and dedicated devices. You know, this is my thought coming from Colombia, South America. When I started working at the North Carolina State University in the United States, I started with these 3 projects. And I worked there with a huge project with the Precision Sustainable Agriculture. If you are interested to know more about this project, you can scan the QR code and see what kind of things they are doing now. I am proud of the things that I made there because I feel I'm feeling that I put the seeds in the correct way. You know, talking about smart devices and small devices that we can put in outdoor conditions. You know, I'm talking about the first one is the stress cam. So the stress cam is a phenocam that is in the field detecting the water stress coming from corn and soybean. They have now more crops, but at the moment that I was there, we were working with corn and soybean. When the leaves in corn are curling, the water stress is coming. In soybean, when the leaves are flipping, the water stress is coming. So we were using machine learning embedded in a Raspberry Pi. And you know that we have a lot of limitation in our Raspberry Pi. So we have hardware limitations. And I was not using any hardware accelerator. So we needed to create some swap in the memory RAM, just run the deep learning model. We were using deep learning model just for soybean detection, and we were using classic machine learning model for corn detection. But we have more challenges. And the challenge was we needed to install a camera in the field for more than 90 days during the summer with high temperature, more than 100 Fahrenheit, 40 Celsius. And I don't know if you know, but if we have a PCB with a temperature higher than 60 degrees, the electronic stuff is totally burned, it's fried. So we have a lot of problems at the very beginning, and we needed to work in a cooling system. When we install fan, we install air vents, but also we needed to put a solar panel there, you know, because we don't have enough power. And we need to have the camera alive for in between 5 a.m. and 6 p.m. And we have a scheduler, we have a proper solar panel. The machine learning is embedded, as I mentioned. But the another challenge that we have is how we can know how the camera is doing in the field, how we know the status of the camera. So we needed to communicate with the camera in a bidirectional way. And as you know, in the rural areas, we don't have good signal, poor signal. So we were working in different fronts on that. So the project, another challenge that we have in agriculture is we don't have corn and soybean the whole year. We need to work for 90 days. That's all, or less, or 60 days. So the point here is that we were working in the first year in 2019, we saw that 70% of the cameras down because they were totally fried with the temperature. Then the second year we have around 58 cameras in the field, and the 70% of the cameras were good, just 30 were down because we have some issues with the material. You know, there was a defect in the fabrication part. And the last year that I was working in the project, we needed to manufacture 200 cameras by our own. So, and this is another challenge that we have when we have this kind of projects and we need to create a scalability of the project. So At that time, the camera was working really good, but we needed to have a little army of students or hire third parties to create these cameras and install the cameras in the field. And this is another reflection that I want to bring to you today. I know that you are moving the knowledge in agriculture and computer vision. Just try to have the stakeholders from the beginning and pilot this prototyping idea with the stakeholders, with the person that will provide you that next step. So, and another thing that is also important is we need to document everything. If we can't document everything, the project will fail so easy. So we need to document the manufacturing part. We need also to know who is the end user. The end user in this case was the technician. So the technician needed to get started the camera, configure the camera. And as I mentioned before, we also have the way to communicate with the camera. So also we create a tech dashboard. And the tech dashboard, we were able to set up the camera and say, I want this camera working in a corn crop or in a soybean, and I want to install, I want to take images, 4 images per hour or 3 images per hour. So I was able also to do that through the tech dashboard. But also see if something is wrong in the field and have the possibility to visit again the field and check if what is wrong. So the second project was the WITS 3D or digital WITS. So, and this is a great product where in this project, the end user is the WITS science. And we have a production system working properly for improving the WITS quantification. The first presentation today, we were talking about WITS and quantify WITS. And this is a challenge that all of us we have in the field. So when these plants competing by nutrients, water, sun with the crops. So in that case, we were using different pipelines. We were using 2 pipelines, one with a GoPro video, and we were running their instruction for motion, the same algorithm that I use in coffee. I use this algorithm here to create a point cloud in the field and also create a high mile per site. But adding to that, I was making semantic segmentation. I was running semantic segmentation model to detect widths and estimate the biomass per species. And this is challenging, So we don't need to reinvent the wheel. We can use the things that we have in our hands. I was using a GoPro, I was using a tablet. So we were making a customized app to control the camera, download the information, create the metadata, upload this information to the cloud. And in the cloud, we were running the instruction for motion part. It looks a little bit complicated, but the good news is this project is still alive, and around 30 states in the United States are working with this product. And another way to do that is instead to have a GoPro camera and video, we will work with a stereo camera. The name of that camera is OD camera. It's a camera coming from a company called Luxonics, where we have a VPU there. Also in the first talk, Chris was mentioning VPU, but this VPU is coming from India. And we have also an embedded system. So the Raspberry Pi is also there. In that case, we were taking still images and processing the depth information. So the pipeline was so similar. And the good news is that the team right now, they are using that specific pipeline with the stereo camera, with the OD, mounting 8 cameras in a tractor, in a camera hub, and making these maps. So they are making right now with quantification during the summer and cover crop quantification during the winter. So the last one, and I would say this is one of my, I also think that all my projects are babies. I love the things that I'm doing. This is something that we made as a team in 2021, and we were working in a benchmark, low-cost open source solution for non-destructive high-throughput phenotyping. And we were participating in an OpenCV competition in 2021, and we won the 3rd place in North America. The good thing of this is this also opened the door to Intel, you know. So my boss, he's here, my manager, he pay attention on my background, so and give me this opportunity in my career because he saw the potential that I have with this kind of systems in closing the gap of users. So let me talk about the benchmark. And I think that I saw different pipelines today, but I think that the benchmark in all the work that you are doing, and the work that I was doing in coffee, we are talking about the same steps: data collection, automatic annotation. I remember Christine also mentioned annotation is a high demanding labor that we need to make by our hands. Annotate coffee structure is difficult. Weeds structure is different, so difficult. So we needed also to create our own automatic annotation pipeline here and create or augmented the data with synthetic natural images or synthetic bench images. And then train the model and optimize the model and deploy the model in the VPU. And in that moment, I was using OpenVINO. That is one of the products that Intel has. So OpenVINO stands for Open Source Visual Inference Neural Network Optimization. We can call that OpenVINO is like a Intel inference framework, where we can optimize, quantize the model, and we can run the models faster in different kind of hardware. And this is super important. So all of us, we are suffering this, and we were making this in a good way. We were running this against the time because we were in a competition. We were running this in 6 weeks. So, and if you are interested to know more about this project, I will say this is a beautiful project. You can scan the QR code and you can check the video that we have in YouTube. Okay, so coming back to this, I make that reflection before this. You need to have the stakeholder since the beginning, from the prototyping idea. And that is happening right now with the benchmark. We were using the benchmark in greenhouses. The leaders of the team are moving the benchmark to outdoor conditions. And right now, the stakeholder, MIGA, they are interested to use the concept of benchmark and run also the experiments. And they are ambitioning to create one of the biggest data sets in wheat in the United States. We are talking about hundreds of thousands of images with high resolution images that they will launch at the end of the year. Okay, I want to keep you in this. So who have been facing this situation? Raise your hand. Just 2 people? Okay, I think that all of us, no? Huh. And I want to make a break here. I want to make a break. I just forget precision sustainable agriculture. This is your journey. This is my journey, you know. And I want to introduce something to you. I don't know. Have you heard about Intel Getty here? Do you know what Intel Getty is? So Intel Getty is a new computer vision platform that Intel launched in September last year, 2022. And this is a great platform that is trying to combine, different steps and put these all things together. And we call that Intel Getty is a powerful AI for everyone. So you don't need to be an expert. You don't need to be an expert in AI to make a computer vision model. So basically with Intel Getty, you are able to rapidly deploy computer vision models. So it brings all things together. So you can create your models just starting with a few images. I'm talking about 10 to 20. I needed to start with my coffee project with tens of thousands of images. And I needed to annotate those by myself. I was spending 6 months annotating images. With Intel Getty, I spent 2 hours and I start with 20 images. So, and I think that maybe you don't believe me, but you need to believe me because I was also surprised with that, we have different kind of smart annotation features that you can annotate, you can help the system could assist you to annotate. You don't need to be an expert. You can put the domain expert, subject matter expert to make annotation. Train the models, export the trained models, and continuously making the improvement. So I have a video here. I don't know if we have time to show the video.
Yeah, how long?
Okay.
3 minutes.
Coffee production is a $400 billion industry, with close to 40% of costs coming from labor management. Coffee growers continually make decisions about labor management based on manual assessment during harvesting. Specialized AI can help them assess the ripeness of their coffee fruits and make data-driven decisions for how many workers will be needed for the harvest at one time. But there is a problem. Most computer vision AI models fail from being overcomplex, expensive, and not allowing for cross-collaboration, forcing teams to work in silos. What if these farmers and agronomists had access to a simpler, more cost-effective AI development interface to participate in the process? Introducing Intel Getty platform, which makes computer vision AI development more accessible by enabling teams to easily build various types of computer vision models, from detection and classification to segmentation and anomaly detection. It also enables the team to work together, the domain experts, data scientists, machine learning professionals, and also developers, to avoid the siloed teams, to be more effective. In this specific use case, it makes sense to build an instant segmentation model to help farmers count their ripe fruits and predict their yield.
Okay, I will stop the video there, and you can continue watching the video with the QR code. And this is anecdotic, I was making this video because that was my authentic experience with the platform. And I really invite you to connect with the Getty team, and I will show you the QR code that you can contact them. So basically, we can develop the models with Intel Getty, but we can also deploy the solution in the edge devices that we were talking today with OpenVINO. And this is a great pipeline. So I know that some of you could be identified with this, working in silos. So you have teams working in data annotation, teams working in data collection. Maybe you don't have time, or you don't have, or you're not putting in your project the optimization part. So, but imagine move this silo stuff to work in collaboration. So we can do that with Intel Getty. So you can scan the QR code if you are interested to know more about the platform and see what Intel Getty offers. So I just want to close this talk that we were talking about different challenges today. And I showed you the limitations that I have in Colombia, South America, and that I was working with edge devices with the classic machine learning. I can use also edge devices right now with more sophisticated algorithms, because right now we have different kind of tools. We have toolkits to optimize and quantize. We have hardware accelerators. We have better CPUs, GPUs. And I just think that the lesson that I have in Colombia is the lesson that also I have today. So it is possible. So the answer is yes, it is possible. It is possible using embedded cameras, edge devices as a powerful solution. So the challenges, and this is a reflection for you as part of the computer vision community in agriculture, is that when you make your project, think about the end user, what the needs they have, the accessibility to the technology. So the conditions for using, I invite you to move the lab experiments to outdoor conditions in critical conditions, because the reality there will be totally different. Good documentation and good support, as I mentioned. And also work in an open source community. If we share our data, we can expedite the training process. So I invite you also to do that. And think about the cross-platform tools for non-technical people. So I really appreciate your time today. And if you are interested to know more about my project, so you can visit my LinkedIn, and I have all of them there. Thank you.
Interest of time, we'll keep moving, but we'll have time at the end of the session if you have questions to speak to Paula. All right. The 72. Very good. Thank you. Let me introduce our next speaker, Manuel Almeida. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Jennifer, and the organizers for providing me. So what I'll be discussing today is how do we build these multimodal models for agriculture, especially when we're building digital agriculture products, right? Or products. So this is the idea of how do we build these digital tools for it, and how do we use these multimodal models, especially when we're doing with deep learning, right? So I'm not going to focus exactly on how you go through the process of potentially building these digital products, because you definitely don't want to go potentially with the most difficult, more complex solution first. But if you are at that stage where you need to use a deep learning model, or you want to go to that next stage, what are the kind of issues that you're going to be running into developing this product? So in terms of my background, I also did a PhD in physics a long time ago, before the whole deep learning revolution. Afterwards, I went more into neuroscience, where I did apply some deep learning and classical image analysis. Afterwards, I was part of the founding teams of various startups, focusing on building the data science team. The first one was focusing on histology, really health tech. One thing that I really found throughout my career is the similarities between at least medical and agriculture in terms of dealing with large images and the multimodal structure associated with combining genomics, and in the case of patient information, but in the case of farms, operation information, and so forth. Afterwards, I took a little detour when I moved to Seattle to go into more e-commerce, of course. When in Seattle, just do like the Romans, and focus more on recommendation models using multimodal data. As you know, you can get images and product information from different stores, and all that information can come with different attributes. And so trying to understand the semantic information, not just on the values themselves, but on the attributes of products, is something that became very important around 2019, when we started having really semantical full textual models like BERT and other transformer models. So it was really fun to kind of start using those at the very early stage to build these overall products. Afterwards, again, took a detour of focusing more on monitoring, especially when it comes to semantic data. As Paola said previously, once you deploy these models or these devices, you need to monitor them to understand if they're working properly. And you may not have validation data. So how do you know your model is failing or not working when you have them deployed? And so by trying to understand the metrics that are coming from those products, either in terms of their distributions of or their specific attributes associated with the devices themselves, you can try to figure out ways to monitor or find anomaly detections, or find other ways to see if there's a domain shift or a data shift in specific application that you're working. And then more recently, for the past few years, I was senior manager of foundational modeling and climate. So climate is part of a much bigger company called Bayer. And in climate, we focus on developing digital products for growers. So the idea is helping the growers facilitate them in their operations. So why do we want to do that? We heard a little bit about today why you want to be working in agriculture. There is more to solve than the 250, which is an incredibly important problem, that by 2050, we're going to have 9 billion people on our planet. But nonetheless, there are problems for us to solve right now. Like if you look at the latest research from the United Nations Food or Agriculture Organization, a third of the population right now, 800 million people, are living in hunger, right? So there's plenty of people to feed, and of course those are issues that are potentially more due than our ability to grow food. But nonetheless, this issue is not going to go away, right? We're potentially talking about 3 billion people by 2050 that are going to be living in hunger, besides our ability to create food otherwise. 14% of the food is wasted before it even gets to retail, right? So this is talking about not just a situation associated with planting, but then harvesting. Once you harvest, or when you harvest it, can affect how the food could be wasted before it gets to retail, where you store it before it actually reaches retail right now. And then we also have a situation associated with climate change, right? So when researchers ask, what are the questions that you're asking yourself in terms of whether or not you're going to be applying some agricultural environmental scheme in your farm, the main questions are, what are the implications and consequences for carrying the scheme, right? They want to know exactly or can you forecast or predict or tell me what is going to be the consequence? So understanding how we can properly predict is going to help growers incredibly well. And further, to most indirect question is depression in growers, right? Being a farmer or a grower in general, anywhere in the world, is an extremely stressful job because you have to make hundreds of decisions throughout the year. And these decisions could impact you tremendously. The amount of cognitive load associated with having all those decisions as being part of your daily life or be able to sustain potentially your family or the local community is incredibly high. And it's no surprise that we see about 3.5 times the depression than the general population. And for those who don't know, there was just a study just came out last month that 30%, at least of the US population, is diagnosed with depression. So that's a huge number that when we create these products, we can help them making those decisions, right? It's either condensing information for them so that they can also be part of that process, but also being able to help them figuring out what are the consequences of those choices they will be having. Again, because we're dealing with multimodal information, because we have a huge fusion of disciplines in agriculture, right? We have genetic information, we have research deciding on greenhouses and then figuring out where those fields are going to be placed, figuring out where to place those specific products or seed products, for example, so that they can actually be mostly efficiently used, even within the same farm, right? One of the decisions that most growers want to do is that they want to hedge their bets, right? They don't want to take the word for a specific company. They want to create their own experiments in their operation and how to best define the locations of those experiments so that they can leverage and hedge those bets more accordingly, right? And then we have, of course, all the associations associated with predicting weather and so forth. And then, of course, the human factors associated with running a farm. So what is the dream, at least in my opinion, in terms of these multimodal models, is that depending on the situation is to have some kind of foundational modeling, where we take all these modalities into account and then potentially apply them to different tasks, right? The goal of foundational modeling is that you can take this base model that has all these correlations associated with the data that you're looking into and then adapt them to different individual tasks, at least when you're running a large operation. And of course, we have not only diversity in modalities, but also in terms of encodings. And for all of us who have worked in images, of course, images are incredibly diverse on their own, but honestly, sometimes they're most of the simpler situation. You also have informations like semantical full text, which come in different languages, depending on the local lingo in terms of how they describe certain diseases and certain information associated with their farms. And then, of course, you have to figure out how to store that information so that you have rapidly available to you. So when you're making these predictions, right? And that may involve some relational databases in case of very structured data, or a more complex like graphical databases and so forth, or document databases for storing images and et cetera. And not only that, you have management practices, and that could be in terms of either categorical information or actual timed events associated with locations. So for example, if you have a practice that's right before you start planting, you may associate it with a categorical information like tilling, no tilling, or if you have an actual intervention, right? This is, I guess, a more medical word for it, but applying a fungicide or a herbicide in a specific situation, you're trying to put an intervention in your field to see potential a causal response to it associated with you having a higher yield at the very end. And you may want to use a more time series approach or at least an event-based approach in terms of your modeling. So that's a different type of encoding that you might have to include when you are putting that modality into your model. So in terms of structural landscapes, there's two spectrums of that. You either take each modality and have its own backbone to which you create its own embeddings, or you potentially have one backbone to rule them all, and in a transformer, unite them. That's the only Lord of the Rings jokes that I would include here. But they'll be between these two kind of the spectrums, right? How do we do individual modalities? Do we separate? Do we merge them together? And what are the pros and cons associated with each one of those? So in terms of embracing the complexity of all these differences, there you can go through it and go through multiple experimentations and setups. But the most common one tends to be late fusion when you tend to have multiple modalities, right? You have each modality by its own network, embedded by its own network, and then you have a late fusion, which then you might have another model that then will output the specific result or use case that you're looking into. And that most likely is the adaptation that you're making into this large foundational model, right? And so what are the issues associated with including extra modality. So one of the most common things we found very early on when dealing with multiple modalities is the idea of overfitting, right? So for example, this is actually from a paper that just came out, I think last week. Yes, 06. For I think NEURIPS. This is the GeoBench. We're essentially trying to create a data set for benching geospatial data, right? On top here, you have multiple, it's just a classification model on just RGB data for multiple data sets. And you can see here the SWIM transformer, the VIT transformer, and of course the next runner-up, which is Convex next, as we heard up today. And they're doing pretty well. The bottom cases here are the situations, or these multi ones, are when you include multispectral data, right, besides the RGB. And you can see, at least with the transformers, the huge drop in performance, right? I don't know exactly the details of the models themselves, but this is a typical situation you end up with. You're thinking you're adding more information to your model by adding this, and all of a sudden the performance drops, right? But the main reason that happens is because we tend to be overfitting, right? And so you need to figure out a way to have an effective regularizer to actually improve the situation, right? And that may be extra data in the case of these large language models, for example, or you can constrain your model further. So for example, we get different backbones for each model. It may be that you want to also force those backbones individually to also solve the task at the same time, so by including extra losses and weight them out, for example. This is one example done, I think, on LexMert. When they combine images and text, they have not only the vision output, the language output, but they also have the cross-modality output. Or you may even do different methods like a triplet loss, right? Because now you go from a single data point to triplets. And that extends your data set, your training data set, to a much larger number. And it further constrains because you're sharing weights among these three different triplets, right? And this is one example. I do forget what the model specifically was, but again, it was a target image with text. You try to find an image and a text that's supposed to be similar or close to it, or almost the same match. And then you find one that's completely the opposite. And by that, it allows you to create a loss that pushes those two similar ones together, and a loss associated with pushing the other ones apart. And that actually increases the constraints that you're putting in a model. If you try to use a single backbone where you're putting everything into a transformer, then you also have a different ways of how you can potentially fuse that information together. You can fuse it all the way from the very beginning, or you can do what's in this paper they call the mid-fusion bottleneck, where you'd start fusing a little later on, potentially maybe not even at the late fusion, because you still have a single backbone. What they found is that as you go to more mid-fusion or midder fusions, the model becomes a slightly little better, right? And you can see here from the attention maps that what happens is when you go to mid-fusion, you just end up with less noise, right? In here, there's all these n-square correlations that are happening in a transformer, and because they're happening right at the very beginning, the model can have end up with very noisy data, leading to potential downgrading in performance. And if we know anything about agricultural data, is that especially when you go out in the field and you let growers from all around the world use it, it's incredibly noisy data. All right, the other problem is also scalability associated with the n-square situation, which there are tons of efficient transformers that are potentially solutions to these problems, but they are usually specific to each use case that they're dealing with. So what are the questions that you're going to be going through as you're choosing these different architectures? Of course, is the use case. And this is incredibly important, as it was mentioned in the last, to have your stakeholders close to you, because that may change over time. You're going to have to figure out about latency requirements. How fast do you need that prediction to be done? Does it need to be done on the back end? Does it need to be done on an edge device associated with it? What are the performance requirements, right? This is a question that you should be having closely with your stakeholders or your team to understand what is the value that you're actually bringing to the grower. And is that a return on investment for them in terms of using that technology in such a way that whatever you're building is also an investment for yourself and your company? A data availability is how available is this data in terms of the timing that you need them? And of course, the infrastructure. Do you have access to these edge devices that are able to do it? Or you have access to more stable infrastructures like those NVIDIA specific platforms where you can store a lot of memory, you can load these large language models potentially even on them if you want it. And then of course, privacy issues, right? Because if you have sometimes privacy issues, you don't want to move that data from either the device or the specific location where that computation is happening, okay? So how do you deal with noisy data? One of the most important parts is to just make sure that the model understands the noise associated with the data, right? One of the common methods that are being used today is essentially to inject latent noise within the latent variables that you're doing if you have a, for example, a multimodal structure. One example of this is this latest paper where they do joint embedding for where they try to predict the embedding itself. And of course, here they have a parameter which they inject into the predictor, right? And one common way that people are doing it these days that we kind of use in a couple cases was neural processes, for example. It's one common way to do that. And that's similar to Gaussian processes. One of the also really interesting things is user confidence on your predictions, right? And this is one thing that I don't think has been studied in many processes except maybe weather prediction. So how are users confident in the predictions you make? One of the funny, interesting things that you find is that they prefer things that are consistent over things that are inaccurate, right? And the other ones, they want to see improvements, right? It doesn't matter if your first prediction is wrong. They want to see that in the next week or when you come out with a new model, that's actually got better over time, right? So the idea is not to get right the first time, is you need to make this a journey with the user that you're having so that you can improve over time. And by doing fast iterations, this is how you get much, much better, right? And so you don't worry about not having a perfect model right away when you're building it. The main thing is to be close to your stakeholders and iterate with them as quickly as you can by showing those improvements together, right? They may not understand the complexity of the models and the infrastructure that you have, but they do understand the idea of you training and actually fitting the model to new data that might give them a new information, right? This is what they do daily in their own work. The other part is including that noise into the prediction, your confidence levels, right? One thing they found is that folks, for example, in emergency services who are using forecasts containing uncertainty information made better decisions than those who had just single decision, right? That may cause a little bit extra confusion to them, but they do understand that there is a risk that they're taking and they can internalize that at least, right? And I think that helps also mentally because you don't have that anxiety associated with the possibilities that could happen or bad. So I think that helps you in terms of creating the next multimodal products that we see, or maybe in convincing you to join industry and build these products for growers, because I think this is a problem that we don't need to solve in 20 years. It's something that we need to be working right away. So thank you.
Yeah, I have a question. At NeurIPS, there was a paper that actually showed that when you deliberately make a error towards the user and they can correct you, that you subsequently trust the fine-tuned system much more.
Yeah.
Is that basically what you're seeing as well? That you should have in your workflow the kind of opportunity that they had their say, and because they had their say subsequently.
Yeah, well, one thing that people have shown is the faster and more efficient a system works, the less value someone attributes to it. So if you have a model that's much, much faster and they don't see the work associated with it, they're intrinsically not adding value to it. So if they're part of it, they see that work and that gives them the value to them. They see that there is more value. This is an idea, I think, associated with operational transparency. The more transparent you are about the work you're doing, the more invested is the user into your product. So exactly.
Thank you again. Thank you so much. Alrighty, please welcome our final speaker of the day. Thank you so much. Is that There you go. All right. What do you turn the? Oh, that I don't know because it's just going to show this. Yeah, if you that way you could do it dual maybe. Yeah, we should be. They should be seeing. Should be seeing this. Yeah, I can put that there.
I really need to stop.
You sort of see that.
Probably get mine up.
Oh, yes. Otherwise, here you go. Give us 1 second. Yeah, the problem is once we cast, I think, unless you can.
Just keep this here.
Oh, okay. Great. Here we good. I'll just make sure. Pay for it. Then screen share. I think we're good.
Right. Good morning, everyone. I'm Ripu Daman Singh, and I would like to thank you for giving me this opportunity to present in front of you. I'm going to be presenting on don't spray everything everywhere all at once. So let me start with a little bit about myself. I'm a principal machine learning scientist at Blue River Technology. We're headquartered at Santa Clara, but based out of San Jose because now we're moving into a new building, as Chris mentioned today morning. So Blue River provides the privilege of working remotely. So I'm based out of Boston, Massachusetts, working remotely with my team. My team is building solutions for the see and spray technology. We're actually trying to push the see and spray technology beyond the herbicides, which we currently do. And this is basically trying to provide value beyond what the current boom can provide. Through this talk, I'll probably, so I'll try to get this message out of why we can do this and how we do this. Before working for Blue River, I was working at ICAI. I was leading the perception team there, which is basically we're trying to automate these funny looking yard trucks in the unstructured environment. What we were trying to do there is optimize the yard logistics field because of these trucks needing to run 24/7, 365 hours a day. And that's a lot of labor hours, right? And that's a dependency on labor, which we want to reduce. Prior to that, I was an applied scientist at Amazon Go, developing models for the Just Walk Out technology, which is the cashier-less store. So yeah, my background has been a lot of computer vision throughout my professional career. Now, let me start with an exercise. When you see this image, what do you see? Yeah? A field, nice. Any more suggestions? Props? Great. Now, when I put my customer hat on, I see this in the terms of optimized yields and reduced costs, right? We see herbicide savings, they also reduce costs. But herbicide savings, they also lead to bluer rivers, right? But when you think about it more closely, you look at this 36.5 meter wide carbon fiber boom. It has 36 cameras on it with 10 Jetson Xavier computes.
all of this working in unison to save herbicides and reducing the herbicides by 66%. That's huge, right? And that the engineer in my mind gets a twinkle in his eye and is like, well, there's much more to that. There's robotics, computer vision, machine learning. There's rugged sensors, and we're going to deploy all of that in real-time, robust systems, working all on edge compute, doing a lot of sensor fusion, right? This is basically like the mecca for all engineers. They want to see such problems, these tough problems, they want to solve them. But yeah, we get it done. We get it done with boots on the field, wheels on the field, grounds on the field, tracks on the field. Basically, everyone from our testing engineers to our data collectors, all of them working together to provide us feedback from the field. It's not just those testing engineers. There's also the engineers who are developing this technology. They go on a stroll on the field to try to see it firsthand what we're doing and what to witness what they're building. We do it with a lot of state-of-the-art technology, a lot of model development. We've been building models that are pushing state-of-the-arts on agricultural semantic segmentation, instant segmentation. But it's not just enough to be at the state-of-the-art. We want to be beyond the state-of-the-art because we're solving a once-in-a-lifetime problem. These are problems which are not already solved. No one's brought so much technology in agriculture, right? And we're trying to push ourselves to stay in the forefront of research and development. But the last piece to this puzzle is our customer feedback, right? That's the most important piece because whatever you're building, you need to get some feedback, and customers being involved in this cycle of providing us, oh, where we did well or what can be improved. Well, that is great. Now, eventually what we're trying to do is we're trying to build these smart machines, right? And when I think about building smart machines, I think about this cycle which starts from sensing and deciding, going into acting, and then finally verifying and learning from that output. This cycle goes on, and the faster you go through this cycle, the smarter your machines become. I'm going to go through just walk you all through of how See and Spray thinks about this problem and how we are actually putting each step together to get that smart sprayer out. Now, when we start with the first step of sensing, right, you think about what do you sense? That's the first question you want to answer. That's where we think about putting the agronomists and the engineers all in one room. Think about the agronomists who are bringing this wealth of knowledge in agronomy from literature, from university collaborators, from our industrial and internal experts. They all come together with the engineers who are bringing a technological perspective. They're bringing what is the state of the art in sensing, what is the state of the art in compute, what they're doing with algorithms out there. Folks like us and who come to CVPR, get state-of-the-art knowledge about what are the best algorithms that can be run. They all come together and they're easily able to identify signal from noise. That's the first piece. You could, let's say the question which is posed out is, how do you improve your See and Spray technology? And you come out with the answer saying, well, I think height will help. Let's say if we get crop height, that will probably help, right? That is the kind of discussion that happens in this room, and they come up with this understanding of that's what we want to sense. But then that's where this platform excels. See and Spray is not just a technology, it's a platform. You ask this question that, oh, okay, height is good enough. How do you sense it? And the platform allows you to not just stay in the visible spectrum, but also apply things beyond the visible spectrum, like LiDARs, for example, or dense depth data, right? You have so much that you can do from this platform. Now, once we've decided how we want to sense it, all the fun part of applying these latest and the greatest computer vision algorithms comes into picture. Our teams have built object detection pipelines, semantic segmentation pipelines, instant segmentation pipelines. We're building depth estimation, scene understanding, pose estimation. All these fun problems are now coming into perspective just because we're able to have that platform allow us to collect that data. And this is not just in the visible spectrum. This is also beyond the visible spectrum. So it's really a platform that enables us to do this. It's enabling us to bring technology to the agriculture field. And this further, you have to optimize this and then run it on the VPU, which basically runs everything in real time. Now, once you have decided what feature you want to enact on, now you act on it. So this image is basically showing on the left, you can see we're able to clearly segregate between weeds from crops. And now you can do whatever you want to apply on those weeds. And then the green patches on the right show that we can very precisely spray on these weeds. So this is the enabler. This allows us to basically put our technology out there in the field. But that's not where that cycle ends, right? Now comes the learning and the verification. All this sensing to deciding to acting, all of this is happening within a blink of your eye. That's in milliseconds, we're actually deploying that on the field. And now we need to gather feedback to say how well we're doing. So one of the tools that we use is basically learning spray savings, right? Because that's like our final goal of reducing the amount of herbicides that we spray. And tools like these on the right, that image shows basically the more gray, that means we've not sprayed that much of the field. If you would have been broadcasting this field, it would have been more orange. And you would have sprayed so much where you would have not needed. Like we can already see the density of weeds are very sparsely allocated throughout that field, right? And that savings is what we strive for. We want to reduce the amount of herbicides that are sprayed, and we want to do more with less. And these are only these are only tools that we show to the customers. There are internal tools which we built for submodule understanding. It's pixel level mean average precision, voxel level mean average precision. All that understanding has to be done at the learning phase, and then that cycle repeats. You go back to sense, you decide, and then you learn, right? The faster now you keep going through that cycle, the more data you generate. And that's where the first challenge comes up, which is the efficient use of data. We collect about 1 million samples a year. Chris mentioned today morning, Deere's machines, they run over 1/3 of the Earth's surface. That's a lot of machines, that's a lot of scaling, and that's a lot of data. So having 1 million samples a year basically puts you in a spot where you have to understand how you use this data, how you collect this data, and how you basically find out the interesting things inside this data sample. And most commonly, the first use that you make of this data is using supervised model development. But can you think about 1 million samples of data and then trying to train a model supervised on it? Think about the annotation cost. Think about how you're going to annotate all those 1 million samples and then still scale. That's really hard, right? The other the other challenge that comes up is the better your model gets, the harder it gets to get that useful sample of data. So how do you bring out that useful sample of data and train on that, right? So that is bringing us to so many opportunities. These opportunities of basically using unlabeled data. So we've been building and developing tools that help us differentiate good data or data which is useful from all the data that exists in those 1 million samples. You can see on the left bottom, you can see you're able to identify dust very differently from all the other data. Those are interesting samples. On the right, you'll see there's a lot of motion blur that happens when you're moving at that speed. We need to identify those as out of distribution. We're actually having workflows that find image similarity. Once you found, oh, these are edge cases, how do we scale them through? How do we find more of these images? We are enabling auto-labeling pipelines. We're enabling pipelines that can use semi-supervised learning. So all of that is possible purely because we have this platform that pushes us closer to using state-of-the-art in agriculture. One might argue that, great, now we're at this spot, this specific type of data you need, but why don't you just generate that data synthetically? Yes, we can, and we've done it. On the left, you can see 2 images of the field which were generated from a synthetic engine, and the right shows 2 of our models. The model on the top was purely trained on a new task with data which is collected from the field, and then the one below is actually based on the synthetic data, and our synthetic data shows that we can push the precision and recall beyond what we were expecting. And this was really exciting. Like these results actually showed us the potential of synthetic data. Now, to conclude my talk, I want to just draw your attention with this motivation first of why we are doing this. Right? The Global Agriculture Productivity Index has proven, and a lot of the talks from my colleagues have pointed to this particular graph, which shows that the green line, which is where we need to be with our productivity, and the orange line is where we are currently with our productivity, shows that gap. At 2050, that gap is going to be huge, and we need to double our production to reach that, which means we need to do more with less. Keeping that in mind, there are 3 takeaways that I want all of y'all to take from this particular talk. First, See and Spray is a technology enabler. It is not just herbicides, it is a technology enabler in agriculture. That platform is allowing us to do much more and bring computer vision, machine learning, all of it on that, closer to applying that to agriculture. Second, herbicides are a piece of the entire crop cycle. The crop cycle has many different applicants, which is you have nutrients, you have fungicides, you have insecticides. All of them have to be applied throughout the crop cycle. And we want to save wherever and whenever we can. So we want to only spray in those areas when we need throughout the crop cycle. So the See and Spray vision is not just to spray at herbicides, but also spray throughout the crop cycle. And third, the most important one, with See and Spray technology, there is no need to spray everything everywhere all at once. Right, that was my talk. Question.
Yeah, I love the title of the talk. The movie is amazing. Great job. I was wondering, you mentioned you have these curious cases like motion blur or other edge cases, and you were thinking about developing pipelines. So question 2 is what led you to the path of deciding to build your internal pipeline versus leveraging some of the tools that are now being built to handle this situation?
Yeah, that's a great question. So there are I put it in this way. There is a domain gap, right? So there are existing tools that allow us to get to a certain extent. Beyond that, it's basically very targeted improvements that you need to make. So we have leveraged a lot of the existing tools and got to a point where we did very well, and it served our purpose. But the better, as I said, the better your models get, those edge cases get even harder and harder to get. And that's where the domain knowledge comes into picture. And that's where we have to leverage our own data and our own tools to basically push it to the usefulness that we need in our system.
See, and what's the impact on the farmers when you manage to push this case? Because it feels like you're pushing a few tiny percentages, right? So is that significant in terms of the business impact?
Yeah, that's another good question. So there is definitely impact if you think about it as a product, right? The product has to be good enough, and then you just keep pushing the state of the art after that. Yes, arguably, like in the farming industry, it's not as safety critical as you would say in the autonomous field, right? But I think it gets to the point of like doing more with less, right? Like if you can save every ounce, if it's possible to save every ounce, like why leave that opportunity on the table? Yes, like after some point, there's the time to get to that is much larger. So then there are other opportunities of we mentioned about nutrients, fungicides, insecticides. We want to solve this as a problem as a whole to do more with less in the whole crop cycle, right? It's not just one solution on herbicides.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for the talk. My question is like using unlabeled data. So like, as you mentioned, we have like 10% of the data labeled and 1% being labeled. How can we leverage labeled data to use unlabeled data?
So
There are a few ways you can think about it. One of the most common ways is using weakly supervised learning. You do not need to annotate each and every sample for develop, right? You could have like one. I'll give just one example, which is currently used in the state of the art. Is you use better models which are offline, doing much better detection, running slower to annotate part of that data, and then use that as a teacher model to the other models, which are like your student, which are running faster on the VPUs. So like there are some ideas you can apply to leverage this unlabeled data. So that's one piece of it. The other is the out of distribution detectors, which I was mentioning, of like your distribution of things you do well at. And then there are some things which are basically just highly uncertain, which are beyond that distribution that you built of things that you do good at. So you just leverage that information from this unlabeled data set that just converges that data set to a very small subset of the whole, the whole data feed.
Thank you.
Sure. One more question.
So you record video or you take samples?
Sorry.
So you record like essentially record videos or they take samples?
I think it's dependent from problem to problem. The problems can take, some problems they need samples, so we take samples. Some problems can take videos, so we use videos. So the modality is basically a multimodal problem, right? And samples, single samples, which are images, and videos are basically different modalities with time being part of it. It really depends on the problem. Different use cases have different things. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Baker. Okay, thank you so much. So thanks for stepping in at the last moment while we were dealing with some of the travel issues. So I appreciate the last moment volunteer. So that brings us to the end of our session for 2023. Again, thank you to everybody for participating, for everyone who submitted papers and posters, and as well as all of our invited speakers. We have sort of the room for a little bit of extra time. So if people want to continue to engage, talk to the poster presenters, ask them questions about the work, as well as the invited speakers, I encourage you to do that. I'm going to shut down the Zoom in just a minute or so, but also the Rocket Chat is available, so you can continue your discussions there. But thank you again for everybody, both remote and in person, for attending. And I hope to see everybody next year in Seattle. Yeah. So not too far away. So thank you guys. Good rest of your